Hey guys, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. The topic of today's video is what is Freemasonry? When people think of the Truther movement or they think of quote unquote conspiracy theories or people looking into things on the fringe, Freemasonry is arguably the quintessential topic that comes up that for people who question the way the world really is, for those who believe that there are types of control in this world that is not what the mainstream would consider normal. Freemasonry usually is one of these groups that comes up. And the reason for this is because of the fact that it is the world's most famous secret society and that it is an organization that has had its influence on history, on society. It's that many powerful, wealthy, and influential people in history have been a part of this organization, and even to this very day are still a part of this organization. And this makes it important for the fact that it is something that people who want to be well informed should know. But a good question that comes up is, well, for a Christian, why is this important? And I want to start here by reading a passage of scripture. And this is from Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 12. And it says, "Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." So when we talk about verse 12, and we talk about the rulers of the darkness of this world and against wrestling against spiritual wickedness in high places, what is being talked about here? We know that Satan is the god of this world. We know that he has control over the dealings of this world, especially when we talk about things that are political in nature or the economic goings of the world or the major thrusts of society. In terms of these things, Satan has a world system that he controls, and this is a biblical teaching. But the question is, how does he do this? Well, these principalities, these powers that are talked about here, the spiritual wickedness in high places, this is talking about demons and about evil spirits and about the control they have over the dealings of this world. And one of the main reasons why they're able to have so much influence over the affairs of men is because so many of the rich and powerful men in this world are caught up in these societies that have an occult worldview, which leads them to serve what the Bible calls seducing spirits or demons. And that when we see from historical study that these groups exist and that people who are initiated into it, we start to see context of what the Bible is saying. And this is why it makes a study of Freemasonry important for Christians, and it makes it relevant for those who want to understand the way the world works in a way that's consistent with a biblical worldview. And like I said, Freemasonry is the world's most famous secret society, that it is a group that has been around for hundreds of years, and that it has toted amongst its members some of the most famous individuals in the world. 15 U.S. presidents have been Freemasons, and that a number of the U.S. founding fathers have been Freemasons, including our first president, George Washington, and also Benjamin Franklin. That there have been numerous presidents outside the founding fathers that have been Masons, including Andrew Jackson, FDR, Harry Truman, Gerald Ford, among others. So some of the most influential presidents in our history have been members of this secret society. And also that some very famous members of the British royal family have been Freemasons. The current queen, Queen Elizabeth II, her father, King George VI, was a member of the Masonic fraternity, and that her husband, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, was initiated into Freemasonry in the 1950s. And that it's interesting that the head of all British Freemasonry in England is a man named Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, and that this man is a first cousin to Queen Elizabeth. And historically, that Freemasonry has been prominent in sections of the royal family and also the British aristocracy, and that there have been numerous prime ministers of England who have been Freemasons as well. And people can think of a number of famous individuals such as Henry Ford or John Wayne or numerous others who have been members of this secret society. And then also, for a Christian, it's very interesting that a number of the cults, the famous cults, have been founded by Freemasonry. The Mormons, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saint, was founded by Freemasons. That Joseph Smith, the prophet of Mormonism, was indeed a member of the Masonic secret society, and his successor Brigham Young, who really continued this movement on, that he was a member of Masonry as well. And the founder of the Jehovah's Witnesses, Charles Taze Russell, was famously a member of Freemasonry. So we see its effect on a number of spiritual affairs in this world by that these cults, or these so-called new religions, that they were founded by members of this society. And then this brings up the question of, well, just because this society is prominent, that doesn't necessarily mean much, because many have claimed that it is just a fraternity. But Freemasonry is more than simply a fraternal organization in the way that, say, college fraternities operate. It has certainly served a purpose of advancing the interests of brother Masons, that people have used it in history and contemporarily as a social network to get ahead in life. But it's much more than that, and the way to understand the secret society of Freemasonry is to understand what it teaches. And Freemasonry truly is a secret society, not because its existence is secret, but because the fact that its teachings are not broadcast to the public. That even Freemasonry itself would say that its rituals and that its teachings are supposed to be esoteric in nature, that they are supposed to not be divulged to the wider world. And the fact is that when one enters into the world of Freemasonry, they enter into a world of symbolism, a world of being told the meanings of symbols, of a world of rituals, a world of secret oaths. And this world teaches that you may be given one meaning of a symbol or of a ritual at a lower level, but as you move up the degrees of Freemasonry, the true meanings of these things is revealed the true meanings are revealed, which is hidden from those at the lower levels. And a good example of this is from the most famous symbol of Freemasonry, which is the square and the compass with a large G in the middle. And people have asked the question, what does that G represent? And at the lower levels, they're told that it represents God, or it represents geometry. But as one moves up to the higher levels, the true meaning of the G becomes known, and that it actually represents Gnosticism. And Gnosticism is a belief. The Gnostics were a group of people who believed in secret teachings, that they believed that they were given knowledge that had not been divulged to the rest of the world. So the Gnostics were a group that believed in esoteric teaching. And esoteric means teaching that is hidden from the rest of the world. So this gives a great deal of insight into the true nature of Freemasonry. And to understand Freemasonry, one must understand the degree system. That the degrees are conferred upon the Mason, and as the Mason is moved up higher and higher into the degree system, they are continually taught more and more of what the society truly teaches. And at the heart of Freemasonry is the Blue Lodge, what is called the Blue Lodge. And this is the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, and that it is the heart of all of Freemasonry in terms of being the foundation, the beginning. but the true meanings of much of Freemasonry is not divulged until one moves into what are called the appendic bodies of Freemasonry. That there are many different bodies of rites in the degree system, such as the York Rite or the Scottish Rite, and that when a Mason becomes a Master Mason, the third degree, which is the highest degree of the Blue Lodge, he then is eligible to move up into the higher degrees of the other bodies of Freemasonry. And that this happens for not all, that it's usually a small minority of people who actually ascend up to the very top of Masonry. And the result of this is that many Masons do not understand even what their own secret society teaches, that their own brotherhood, the true meaning of the society, is hidden even from most Masons. And when one is initiated into these degrees, there is a ritual in the lodge that will take place, and that there will be a great deal of symbolism in these rituals, that there will be many things that are said, that are repeated, that the meaning of these things may be aloof to those being initiated, and that the idea is that the Mason is supposed to be initiated further and further into the light of Masonry, or the true knowledge of Masonry. And in each one of these degrees that a Mason is initiated to, he is required to swear an oath at the end of these degree rituals, where he is told to not divulge the secrets of the society to the rest of the world. And this is usually on pain of some form of painful death, or that there are severe consequences that are talked about in these degrees as a part of the oath, that if they break their oaths, that these things are supposed to come upon them. But as I said, usually one will move through these degrees, and that if a Mason is able to, he will ascend past the Blue Lodge, and he will move up to either the York Rite, which is called the quote-unquote the Christian Rite, which has 13 degrees, or the Scottish Rite, which has 33 degrees. And that the Scottish Rite is probably the most famous rite within Freemasonry. And that when one understands what is being taught by Freemasonry as one moves up the degree systems, particularly the Scottish Rite, they will reveal that Freemasonry is based off the pagan teachings of the ancient mystery schools. That when one starts to understand the nature of the degrees and understand the true meaning of this symbolism that I've talked about, that they start to realize what is being taught to them is not Christian in nature, but that it's pagan in nature. And as one gets high enough up, it is actually occult in nature. And a good example of this comes from when one enters into the fourth degree, the Royal Arch degree, that they are told the true meaning, or the true name of God according to Masonry. And the name for God according to Masonry is Jabulon. And that this is a composite word, and that based off the three deities of Jehovah, Baal, and Osiris. So we can see the name of the true biblical God being put alongside these Babylonian and Egyptian pagan deities. And that this continues on, that as one moves up the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, they discover that they are being initiated into the pagan mystery schools that go back to ancient Babylon and the Tower of Babel. And to prove that, I'm going to read from Jim Shaw. He has a track called No Room in the Lodge for Jesus. And for those who don't know, Jim Shaw was a Freemason who ascended up to the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite before he was saved and became a Christian, and left Freemasonry after understanding that it was a pagan organization and it was inconsistent with his newfound faith in Jesus Christ. But Jim Shaw famously said, referring to the Scottish Rite, in the Scottish Rite, many gods are revered, many religions are taught, but never is the blessed name of Jesus allowed. Teachings of the Kabbalah, Zen Avesta, and the Gnostics, along with astrology, Egyptian gods, Zeus, Osiris, Semiramis, Isis, and Krishna. The god of nature is the god of the Scottish Rite. The ancient philosophers Plato, Pythagoras, Socrates, and Philo are given great honor. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are given reverence as gods. Such are the great secrets of Scottish Freemasonry. The Pentacle of Solomon hangs in the lodge, along with the equilateral triangle, the all-seeing eye, and the brazen serpent of the Druses. Universal brotherhood is more important than the love of Jesus, who is ignored. So this shows what is really going on with Freemasonry. Is one is sends up the Scottish Rite, especially, one will begin to learn that they are being initiated into the pagan mystery schools. And it's when you get up to the 33rd degree that you really learn the true nature of Freemasonry, because they are told about how they are being given light, referring to the secret teachings that are going to save them. Masons believe they're saved through their supposed good works and their supposed the fact that they have been given light or secret knowledge not given to by others. But when you get up into the highest degrees of the Scottish Rite, one learns that the light bearer, the light giver, or the true god of Masonry is Lucifer. They don't like the biblical description of Satan, but instead they refer to Lucifer, and we know this is the biblical devil, as their god, and that this really comes out when one examines the quotes of some of the history's most famous Freemasons. One is a man by the name of Albert Pike, and his book Morals and Dogma is considered really the Bible of Freemasonry, in that his book Morals and Dogma explains the meaning of the rituals, and he walks through the meaning of all of the Masonic degrees up to the 33rd degree. And when you read this book, he has a quote saying, "Lucifer, the light bearer, the morning star, doubt it not." And when one understands the context of the light or the secret knowledge being given to Freemasons, it shows that they believe that Lucifer is the one who is giving them their knowledge, which reinforces the fact that they do truly serve Lucifer at the highest levels of Freemasonry. And that another good example of this came from Manly P. Hall, when he talks about how the Mason has the seething energies of Lucifer in his hands, that he said this in his writings, that they really believe that Lucifer is the one who gives them their power. And that when you go higher up into the highest degrees of the Scottish Rite, you're not only being initiated into the paganism of the ancient mystery schools, but that you're also being initiated into the occult. And it's interesting that when one understands that the 33rd degree of the Scottish Rite, the highest degree, is an honorary degree that can only be conferred on a Mason if they are invited by the Supreme Council of the Scottish Rite in Washington, D.C. to be a part of it, so that it is invitation only. As a matter of fact, if you are asked to have this degree conferred upon you, you will be disqualified. And that this is really interesting because of the fact that it shows a choosing of the initiation into the highest degree from those who are at the very top of the Masonic pyramid. And that for those who have studied Freemasonry extensively, there are other Masonic rites that go past the Scottish Rite, even though this is not officially recognized by Freemasonry. The most famous body of degrees that goes beyond the Scottish Rite is called the Rite of Memphis Mizraim, and that this degree system goes up to 96 degrees, and that this degree came about and was really developed by a man named Garibaldi. Giuseppe Garibaldi was a big player in developing this rite of Freemasonry, and he was the one who united Italy during Italian unification. That the Italian Freemasons played a huge part in uniting the kingdom of Italy, and that they had a huge part in the affairs of Italy during the 19th century when it became a country. But this man Garibaldi, he played a large part in developing these rites of Memphis Mizraim. And the rite of Memphis Mizraim is important to understand Masonry because that it is what is called occult Masonry. And this is where Masonry, the hidden world of Freemasonry, not recognized by the official regular bodies of Freemasonry, really moves into the higher levels of the occult. It moves into the high ceremonial ritual magic, the things that get extremely dark, where the members of it understand that Lucifer is their god. And this really bleeds into the Illuminism of the Illuminati, that is one of the great controlling groups of all of these other occult groups. And it's interesting when one studies other occult groups such as the OTO, for example, the Ordo Templis Orientalis, or the Order of the Oriental Templars. This is a very, very prominent occult group that was joined by men such as Aleister Crowley was one of the main men of the OTO, and he was a very famous Freemason who had so many Masonic degrees that he said he couldn't keep all his medals on his front without them all falling off or weighing him down, because he was so initiated into Freemasonry. So when one gets past the official bodies of the Blue Lodge, the York Rite, and the Scottish Rite, there's a hidden world of occultism that really begins to play out. And all of this stuff does go back to the Tower of Babel, and that that if one studies the meaning of Freemasonry, it comes down to that there's a lot of Baal worship that comes out, that it really goes back to the Babylonian mysteries. And this is fascinating because if people have watched my other videos about the Roman Catholic system and the Vatican that are based on the ancient Babylonian mystery religions, you see that the Vatican and Freemasonry are apart. They are based on the same mystery teachings of paganism, and that even though these groups have claimed to be opposed to each other in history, they are in fact based on the same teachings and the same ancient religions. And this is especially interesting when you see that groups such as the Jesuits, who wrote the highest degrees of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and that groups such as the Illuminati, which were founded, the Bavarian Illuminati anyway, was founded by a man named Adam Weishaupt, who was a Jesuit priest. So we see that all these groups come together. We see that Freemasonry wishes to officially have an image of being a respectable fraternity that teaches morality, but that it's in fact a group that has huge levels of influence on society, because its members have been a part of this group, of the rich and powerful of the world have joined this group, and that it is a group that gradually initiates people from perhaps a Christian worldview, or perhaps a more secular worldview, or perhaps some type of an agnostic worldview, and it slowly initiates you step by step into paganism. It initiates you into Gnosticism, and initiates you into occultism, and ultimately it initiates you into Luciferianism. So this is the teaching of Freemasonry. It's not so much the idea that a 33rd degree Mason is a higher rank in a military, for example. He's not a general per se commanding all the first degrees, but it's more of the idea of, if you think of university degrees, that someone who has a doctorate should have more knowledge than somebody who only has a bachelor's or an associate's degree. And that's really what these degrees do. As one goes through the degree system, as one goes through the ceremonies of Freemasonry, as one begins to study the true meaning of Freemasonry, the true meaning of the symbolism, the true meaning of these teachings, that is when the truth of it really comes out. And it only a really small number of Masons will take the time to really study the meaning of their society. But if you read, like I said, men such as Albert Pike and Manly P. Hall, and read their writings, such as Morals or Dogma, or Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teachings of All Ages, then it is seen that they are initiating men into paganism and into the occult and into Luciferianism. When one reads Manly P. Hall's book, The Secret Teaching of All Ages, he has sections in there where he talks about ceremonial magic. He talks about the invocation of spirits that Christians know are demonic. And that Manly P. Hall has numerous quotations about Lucifer, as well as Albert Pike, that at the heart of Freemasonry is the occult. And that this is interesting, and this is notable because the Masonic degrees of the Scottish Rite are based primarily on the ancient Kabbalah, which is both, the Kabbalah is recognized as a form of Jewish mysticism, but it goes back even further back, the Kabbalah. It predates, quote unquote, the Jewish interaction with it. It goes back to Babylon, ancient Babylon, that the Jews came into they came into contact with the teachings of the Kabbalah during their exile in ancient Babylon. So once again, Babylonian paganism, Babylonian occultism, Babylonian magic, all of these systems go back to the Tower of Babel. And at the heart of these systems is Lucifer. And that through these occult organizations such as Freemasonry, Satan is able to exercise his control over the dealings of the world. Now, this all being said, guys, I think that people often wonder where do you start in terms of reading? There's so much information on the internet, some of it good, some of it bad. One book that I would highly recommend is the book The Deadly Deception by Jim Shaw. It's not an exhaustive treatment of Freemasonry, but it is his story, his testimony of entering Freemasonry, moving up the degree system, becoming a Christian, understanding the true nature of Freemasonry, and then leaving the fraternity. That his book is really a moving story of a Christian who came out of Freemasonry. And that another great book is Occult Theocracy by Edith Starr Miller, otherwise known by the name Lady Queensborough. And that Occult Theocracy is really an encyclopedia of the different secret societies and occult groups, very well written, and it talks about all of the different Masonic degrees and the different groups and the different portions of Freemasonry. It is a wealth of information. So those two books are really two great starting places for understanding Freemasonry. But as anything, if you really want to understand Freemasonry, you have to read the Masonic literature. And a warning on that, some of it is, as I said, you read Pike and Hall and these other guys, and they do have a cult belief system, so Christians should be aware of that. But the point on this is that there's really these beliefs of what Freemasonry really believes can be understood by quoting and documenting their own literature. This isn't just fringe people on YouTube with tinfoil hats alleging these things. That all of what has been said here about Freemasonry, it goes back to their own writings and it can be documented, and that's so important. So that being said, guys, as I always say, look into it. Don't let the mainstream ridicule stop you from having a greater understanding of the world. As Hosea says, don't be destroyed for lack of knowledge, so look into it. But that being said, this is Joe Harper with Reformed Truther Ministries. God bless.